Crossing over now live to the Royal Yacht Britannia to East Tamar, where we can see Chris Patten saying farewell for the last time as the 28th Governor of Hong Kong before he boards the Royal Yacht and sails off into the moonlight and off to Manila. Of course, from Manila he'll fly overseas, and he says he's going to spend some time at his house in France writing a book about Asian economies and do a little bit of gardening and then ponder his next move. He says he has no plans to write in the immediate future about Hong Kong. He's already rejected some job offers, according to reports, such as the UN envoy to Bosnia and Vice Chancellor of Durham University. Frank Ching, what do you think the future holds for Chris Patten?
Well, I think he'll probably do exactly as he's said. So far, he's been a man of his word. He came to Hong Kong in July '92, and nobody thought he would stay on until the very end. Everybody thought he would return to the UK and take some high job within the government. And he kept saying, I will stay, God willing, until June 30th, 1997. So clearly, God has been willing. And I assume that he is now going to go to France and write the book on Asia, not just Hong Kong, but on Asia that he has said he'll write. And after that, I don't think he knows.
Chris Patten looking obviously very happy, as well as saddened to be leaving Hong Kong, a place that he's come to know as home for the last 5 years, making many friends as well as enemies in the time that he spent here. Of course, for Chris Patten, Frank, there's always the prospect of returning to politics in the UK. But with a new, younger Tory leader in the form of William Hague, one wonders just how Patten might fit into this new, younger leadership style. He must feel rather out of sync with politics at the moment.
That may well be the case, and I think that Patten may well stay out of politics for a while. But looking at these scenes, they reminded me of the scene when David Wilson left Hong Kong in 1992, 5 years ago. And at that time, David Wilson, of course, left by air. He didn't leave by sea. But he was waving goodbye to people of Hong Kong from the door of his plane. And he kept waving and waving, and it looked like he was reluctant to go inside the plane. And I get the same sense now. I think Chris Patten really has a great fondness for Hong Kong, and he doesn't want to leave, or at least he wants to come back. You know that earlier today, before he left Government House, he wanted his car to make 3 rounds because there's this Chinese, I guess, superstition that if you do this, you will eventually return. But I heard in the radio that the car did not make 3 full rounds. It only made 1.5 rounds because he then ran out of time and had to leave Government House. So that may mean that he will not return to Government House. Doesn't necessarily mean he will never return to Hong Kong.
Well, he has expressed the wish to return to Hong Kong one day. Of course, he wanted to leave Hong Kong by flying out of Cheklapkok Airport. Unfortunately, that won't be ready. That wasn't part of his scenario.
Right. I think he knew that from the beginning because the airport's construction had been delayed.
Perhaps when he does return, Cheklapkok will be ready and he'll be able to fly in and fulfill that wish.
I certainly hope so. If I may mention the symbolism that I observed when Jiang Zemin spoke and earlier when Prince Charles spoke. Before midnight, when Prince Charles spoke, the interpreters announced the speech in English first and then in Chinese. And after midnight, when Jiang Zemin spoke, they spoke in Chinese, which was then translated to English.
And of course, at the stroke of midnight, we saw the clock counting down in Tiananmen Square. With military precision, the Chinese flag and the Bohemia flag went up the flagpoles.
Yes. Well, I think that's why they call it military precision.
There you have scenes of East Tamar with Governor Patten making his final farewell to Hong Kong people. Governor Patten said that he expected this to be a handkerchief day. I think it's probably turned out to be a two-handkerchief day for Chris Patten.
Apparently, Prime Minister Blair is not leaving on the Britannia. I think he's leaving by air.
He and Foreign Secretary Robin Cook will, of course, as you say, be leaving by air. They're going to be flying out shortly this evening, I understand. Boycotting the inauguration of the Special Administrative Region government and the Provisional Legislature. Instead, they're going to be sending representatives. The U.S. Consul General Richard Boucher will be attending the swearing in for the Americans, and for the British, Francis Cornish, the new UK Consul General, and Hugh Davis, the leader of the Joint Liaison Group's British team. Both countries have failed to convince other countries not to attend the swearing in. Countries like Belgium, Finland, Greece, Australia, New Zealand are all planning to endorse the Provisional Legco. A matter of pragmatism over principle, Frank, do you think?
Well, no, I think that the British and the Americans need to work with the SAR government, and the Provisional Legislature is an integral part of it, so they have to work with it. They cannot pretend that it doesn't exist. They cannot act as though it's an illegal organization. And I think what they're doing is they're making a gesture indicating that they prefer to have an elected government, elected legislature in place as soon as possible. And I think that this combined pressure, not just from Britain and the US, but also from Western Europe and elsewhere, will result in early elections.
Early elections meaning direct elections? One man, one vote?
No, what I mean is early elections along the lines of the Basic Law, the description of the first legislature with 1/3 of the seats directly elected.
Tung Chee-hwa promising that in May of next year.
That's right, and I think that means that the Provisional Legislature will have served its term by June, so it would have been in office for a year at the most.
Clearly, Chris Patten not wanting to make his leave of Hong Kong just yet, savoring these last moments in the territory.
Embracing Kerry McGlynn, his spokesman.
Kerry McGlynn staying on in the Hong Kong government. Next to him, his wife Jenny. Sir Jimmy McGregor, recently honoured in the Queen's Birthday Honours List. Francis Cornish, the new UK Consul General. Secretary for Housing Dominic Wong, former Attorney General Jeremy Matthews, who is also returning to the UK. All his senior officials in the administration there to say goodbye to Patten. Now saying goodbye to his executive councillors. Brief glimpse of the backside of Simon Murray. The first of the Pattens to board the Royal Yacht Britannia. David Tang, entrepreneur, good friend of Chris Patten. Hugh Davis, leader of the British side of the Joint Liaison Group. It must be hard, Frank, for Patten to say goodbye after all these years, 5 years of...
It's 5 years, it's a large chunk of a president's life.
Lavender Patten boarding the yacht. Cheers going up from the crowd. I wonder what he's thinking now, Frank, as he boards the Royal Yacht Britannia.
Wow. Yeah, all right.
Very emotional farewell for the Pattens as they say goodbye to Hong Kong. Hopefully not for the last time.
Well, as you pointed out, it's interesting. The Foreign and Economic Review has already invited him to come back a year from now to speak at the next conference.
And has he accepted your invitation?
No, I think he indicated that up to now he has spoken for free. And so the review has offered to negotiate a fee with him.
So as former governor of Hong Kong, his currency may well have gone up beyond the budget of your particular publication.
Well, we'll see.
the Royal Yacht Britannia on her last major voyage off to Manila with the Governor and Prince Charles. The Britannia itself clocking up 1 million miles, having gone 7 times around the world since being commissioned in 1954. After Manila, she returns to Portsmouth by the end of the year, and then she's being sold to who we don't know. Commander British Forces Brian Dutton will be sailing in the Royal Escort ship, the HMS Chatham, where he's been based for the past several days following the winding down of the garrison. Frank Ching, what do you think the most enduring legacy will be that Chris Patten leaves behind him?
I think a more open government. You know that before he came, there was no such thing as a governor's question time in the legislature, and he instituted that, and he opened himself up not only to questions from the legislature, but also from the press and from the public at large. He had phone-in programs where any member of the public could telephone and ask him questions. And his last phone-in program was only a couple of days ago, and I was reading a transcript, and it was a very, very long transcript. All kinds of people calling in with all kinds of questions, and he answered all of them. And there were also people who asked him for a photograph of his family autographed, and he agreed to do that. There were also people who asked him for a photograph of his family autographed, and he agreed to do that. So I would hope that this openness will continue in the Special Administrative Region under Mr. C.H. Tong. I think it would be difficult not to continue this, because people would then say, how come you're not willing to do this when a colonial governor was willing to do it? So I think Chris Patten has set a very high level of transparency of the government that the incoming administration will have to live up to.
And do you think C.H. Tung will be able to carry that forward?
Oh, I think he will recognize that this is what his predecessor did, and that he will have to do similar things.
Of course, C.H. Tung standing by for the inauguration of his incoming government, as well as his provisional legco and his own swearing in less than an hour's time. Governor Patten talked earlier about the Hong Kong success story and wishing Hong Kong well in the future. Last week we saw the Hang Seng Index hitting a record high with a record turnover. Do you think that kind of success can continue?
Well, I think it's true, of course, that Hong Kong is a great success and is very prosperous. But I think it's somewhat exaggerated, because if you just go by per capita income, then Hong Kong's income level is very high, $25,000 US a year. But if you look at spending power, people don't really have all that money to spend, because so much of it goes to pay for rent.
Those final shots of the Royal Yacht Britannia as it prepares to sail away with the We'll be coming back in just a few moments with more coverage of the handover. Stay tuned.